My son stole from me. I mortgaged the house to give Ethan money for his education, and he took it and just disappeared. No phone calls, no paid-for college, no Ethan. I never thought he would do something like that. But when it happened, it broke my heart at first, and then it lit a fire of rage inside me. I found out where he lived, found out that he was throwing a party with my money. I went there uninvited, and my next step was to make Ethan regret his actions. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The kitchen smelled of old wood and simmering stew, but the air crackled with something sharper. I stood by the stove, stirring the pot when Ethan burst through the door. His boots stuttered against the linoleum, and his eyes, those sharp green eyes I'd loved since he was a boy, flashed with something cold. "You're holding me back, Dad," he snapped, tossing his jacket over a chair. "You want me to stay in nowhere forever." I froze. The spoon slipped in my hand, clinking against the pot. "Ethan, I'm trying to help you," I said, my voice softer than I meant. "College isn't cheap." He laughed, a short, bitter sound, and grabbed a plate from the counter. "Trying? You're sitting on that house like it's a gold mine. You want me to beg?" He slammed the plate into the sink. It cracked, a jagged line splitting the ceramic. My chest tightened, but I didn't flinch. Not yet. "Ethan," I said, stepping toward him, "I'll do what I can. You're my son." My words felt heavy, like stones dropped into a well. He didn't look at me, just ran a hand through his dark hair and muttered, "Whatever. Just get it done." The next morning, I sat in the bank, clutching a worn leather bag stuffed with documents. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow on the polished desk. The banker, Mr. Davis, adjusted his glasses and slid a stack of papers toward me. "Mr. Jameson, you're sure about this? Mortgaging the house is a big step." His voice was kind, but it carried a warning. I nodded, though my hand trembled as I reached for the pen. The ink felt like a chain as I signed my name. Harlan Jameson, over and over. $75,000. Enough for Ethan's tuition, his books, his future. I saw him as a boy, scribbling sons and stick-figure families on homemade cards. For Daddy, he'd written in wobbly letters. Where was that boy now? The bus ride home was quiet. Rain streaking the windows, my bag sat heavy on my lap, the weight of the loan documents pressing into my thighs. I thought of the house, its creaky stairs, the garden I'd tended since Sarah died. It was all I had left, and now it was tethered to a bank's mercy. For Ethan, always for Ethan. When I stepped into the kitchen, the air felt wrong, too still. The stew pot sat cold on the stove, untouched. A note lay on the table, scrawled in Ethan's sharp handwriting. "Gone. Thanks." My stomach twisted. I called his name, my voice echoing in the empty house. No answer. I dialed his number, pressing the phone to my ear. Beep, beep, beep. Nothing. I sank into a chair, staring at the old clock on the wall. Its hands had stopped at midnight years ago, frozen in time. Like us, like me, waiting for a son who didn't come back. The phone slipped from my hand, and I whispered, "Where are you? Ethan." The silence swallowed my words, but something else stirred inside me. A spark, small but growing, refusing to fade. Rain battered the kitchen windows, and the darkness pressed in. I sat at the table, my thumb hovering over Ethan's name on my phone. I'd called him every day for 4 months. Every day. The same dead-end beeps. His social media was a ghost town. No posts, no stories. Just a profile picture of him smirking in sunglasses. I dropped the phone onto the table. It clattered too loud in the quiet. The house creaked around me. Its familiar groans no comfort. I thought of Sarah, my wife. Her voice rough but warm. Ethan's got a selfish streak. Harlan. Watch him. I'd brushed it off then, laughed it away. Now Sarah's words clawed at me. Had I missed something? Had I failed my son? I couldn't sit still. I grabbed my coat and headed to Ethan's old apartment, a cramped studio downtown. The bus smelled of damp wool, and the city blurred past. Wet streets, neon signs, strangers huddled under umbrellas. At his building, I climbed the stairs, my knees aching. The hallway reeked of stale smoke. I knocked on his door, once, twice. Silence. I pressed my ear to the wood, straining for footsteps, for anything. Just the hum of a distant radiator. Mr. Jameson, the landlord, a wiry man with a gray beard, appeared behind me. He moved out weeks ago. Didn't say where. My throat tightened. I mumbled a thank you and left. The rain soaking my scarf. Back home, I rifled through Ethan's old things. A box of school projects. A soccer medal. Letters he'd written as a kid. I'll make you proud, Dad. One read. I traced the words, my fingers shaking. What had I done wrong? I wrote him a letter, pouring out my worry, my love. Halfway through, I tore it up. He wouldn't read it. The next day, I met Emily at a cafe. The place buzzed with chatter, the air thick with the scent of coffee and fresh bread. Emily sipped her latte, her bracelets jangling. He's young, Harlan, she said, her voice gentle but firm. He'll come around. Let him go. I stirred my tea, the spoon scraping the cup. He's my son, Emily. I need to know he's safe. My words sounded hollow. Even to me. Emily sighed, patting my hand. You're too good to him. Always have been. I left the cafe and wandered home. The rain heavier now. In my bedroom, I opened a drawer and found a photo. Ethan at 7, grinning, his small hand in mine. We'd been at the lake, the sun warm on our faces. I clutched the picture, my chest aching. What happened to you? I whispered. The question hung in the air, unanswered. I couldn't wait anymore. I pulled on my coat, the photo tucked in my pocket. I'd find him. I had to. The rain stung my face as I stepped outside, my boots splashing through puddles. I didn't know where I was going, but I kept moving, driven by a need I couldn't name. At the corner, a cafe's warm light spilled onto the sidewalk. I ducked inside, shivering, and ordered a tea. As I waited, voices drifted from the next table, sharp and careless. One word stopped me cold. Ethan. The cafe hummed with life, clinking cups, laughter, the hiss of the espresso machine. I stood by the counter, my coat dripping onto the floor, waiting for my tea. The air smelled of coffee and rain-soaked jackets. I rubbed my hands together, trying to shake the chill when a voice cut through the noise. Ethan's got a new Tesla. Can you believe it? It was Clara, a neighbor I hadn't seen in months, gossiping at a table nearby. My heart stopped. Tesla. I gripped the counter, the wood cool under my palms. Clara's friend leaned in, her eyes wide. He said it was a bonus from work. Guys living large. A bonus. Ethan hadn't worked a steady job in years. The money, my money, flashed in my mind. The house, the loan, the sacrifices. I'd skipped new clothes, dinners out, all for him. And he'd bought a Tesla. I sank into a chair. My tea forgotten, the room spun. I saw myself in the bank signing those papers, my hand shaking. I saw the empty kitchen. Ethan's note. Gone. Thanks. Rage bubbled up, hot and sharp, but I swallowed it. Not here. Not yet. The cafe door jingled, and Brittany Hayes strode in. Ethan's friend, all sleek hair and sharp cheekbones. She spotted me and smirked, her heels clicking as she approached. "Harlan," she said, her voice syrupy with pity. "You look tired. Rough day." I met her gaze, my jaw tight. "You could say that, and you look like you know more than you're saying." My words were quiet, but they carried an edge. Brittany's smile faltered just for a second before she tossed her hair and walked away. I watched her go, my mind racing. Did she know? Was she part of this? I left the cafe. The rain colder now, biting at my face. At home, I tore through my desk, papers spilling onto the floor. Bank statements, loan agreements, my savings account gutted. I found the mortgage documents, the ones I'd signed for Ethan. $75,000 gone. My hands shook as I spread the papers across the table, each number a knife in my chest. I remembered his voice, smooth and certain. "I'll pay you back. Dad, every cent." I'd believed him. Fool. I sank into a chair, the house creaking around me. The photo of Ethan, the one from the lake, lay among the papers. His smile mocked me now. I picked it up, my fingers tracing his face. "You made a mistake, Ethan," I whispered. My voice was steady, but inside something shifted, a fire growing hotter. I reached for my phone, my thumb hovering over his number. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I stopped. No, he wouldn't hear me beg. I set the phone down and gathered the statements, stacking them neatly. This wasn't over. I'd find him. I'd make him face me. The rain tapped the windows, steady as a heartbeat, and I knew what I had to do next. The living room was a cocoon of shadows, the only light spilling from a lamp that flickered when the wind rattled the windows. I sat on the sagging couch, a cardboard box balanced on my knees. Inside were pieces of Ethan, photos, letters, scraps of a life I'd thought I knew. I lifted a picture, its edges worn soft. Ethan at 6, clutching my hand at the county fair, his grin wide enough to swallow the sun. My fingers trembled, tracing his face. Where had that boy gone? I set the photo down and dug deeper. A letter folded tight, inked in his childish scrawl. "Dad, I'll make you proud. Promise." I believed him then. Working double shifts at the diner, my back aching to buy him that red bicycle he begged for. I'd skipped meals to save for his school trips, smiled through exhaustion when he brought home report cards. All for him, always for him. But there were other memories, sharper ones. His first lie, at 17, claiming he'd lost the $60 I'd given him for books. I'd found the new sneakers in his closet, but I said nothing. Love makes you blind. I pulled out another photo. Ethan at 19, arms crossed, smirking at the camera. That smirk. I'd seen it in the kitchen months ago when he demanded the money. My money. My house. I stood, the box sliding to the floor, and crossed to the hall closet. My hands moved on their own, shoving aside coats until I found it, his old leather jacket tucked in the back. It smelled of his cologne, sharp and expensive. I pressed it to my chest, the leather cool against my skin. Tears came hot and fast. I'd given him everything, and he'd taken it all. My trust, my home, my heart. I sank to the floor, the jacket crumpling in my arms. "Why, Ethan," I whispered. The house didn't answer, but then something shifted. The tears slowed, and my grip tightened. I wasn't broken. Not yet. I stood, tossing the jacket onto the couch like it burned. He wouldn't win. I grabbed a letter from the box, his last one, promising to pay me back, and tore it to pieces, letting the scraps flutter into the trash. Enough. A knock at the door startled me. Susan, my neighbor, stood on the porch, her umbrella dripping. "Harlan, you okay? Come over for tea." Her voice was warm, but I shook my head. "I need to be alone," I said, my tone firmer than I felt. She nodded and left, her footsteps fading into the rain. Back inside, I found a notebook, its pages crisp and empty. I sat at the kitchen table, the clock still frozen at midnight. My pen scratched the paper. He took my money, but not my strength. The words felt like a vow. I wrote more. Memories, lies, the weight of my sacrifice. My eyes burned, but my hand was steady. I wasn't the fool he thought I was. I closed the notebook, my gaze drifting to the phone on the counter. I could call him, demand answers. My fingers twitched, but I stopped. No, not yet. I needed a plan. Something sharper than anger. I stood, the notebook tucked under my arm, and glanced at the phone again. It glowed in the dark, tempting me. I turned away, whispering, "I'll find a way. Ethan." The words hung in the air, a promise I meant to keep. The kitchen table was a battlefield of paper, bank statements, loan agreements. My savings account drained to nothing. I sat there, pen in hand, underlining the number that haunted me. $75,000. My sacrifice. Now a shiny Tesla in Ethan's hands. The room was dim, the bulb overhead buzzing like my thoughts. I flipped through texts he'd sent years ago. Promises of "I'll make it right." Dad. Lies. Every one. I couldn't wait anymore. Emily had mentioned a lawyer, Ryan, who'd helped her with a dispute. I grabbed a scrap of paper and scrawled his number, my handwriting jagged. The phone felt heavy as I dialed Emily. "He's good. Harlan," she said, her voice crackling through the line. "He'll listen." I thanked her, hung up, and called Ryan. His secretary booked me for noon at a cafe downtown. My stomach churned, but I pushed it down. No more hesitation. The cafe was alive with chatter, the air thick with espresso and fresh pastries. I sat by the window, rain streaking the glass, my hands clasped around a mug. Ryan arrived, a man in his 50s with kind eyes and a gray suit. He slid into the booth, setting a notepad down. "Mr. Jameson," he said, his voice steady. "Tell me what happened." I started slow, my words catching on the pain. The house, the loan, Ethan's betrayal. My voice shook when I mentioned the Tesla, but I pressed on, laying out the numbers, the promises, the silence. Ryan listened, jotting notes, his brow creased. When I finished, my hands were trembling, but my spine was straight. "I want justice," I said, the words solid as stone. He leaned forward, his pen tapping the pad. "You've got a case. He took the money under false pretenses. We can file a claim, maybe more." His confidence sparked something in me, a flicker of hope. "It won't be easy," he added, "but you've got proof. Use it." I nodded, my mind racing. I saw Ethan smirk, heard his cold laugh. He thought I'd crumble. He was wrong. We talked details, documents, timelines, next steps. When Ryan left, I felt lighter, like I'd shed a weight I hadn't named. The bus ride home was quiet, the city a blur of wet lights. I thought of Ethan as a boy, telling me he'd be a doctor, his eyes bright with dreams. Had it all been a lie, I pushed the thought away. No more excuses. At home. I dropped my bag on the counter, the house creaking around me. My phone buzzed, a notification lighting the screen. My breath caught. Ethan's name. A message after months of silence. My heart pounded, urging me to open it, to hear him out. But my hand froze. What could he say? Another lie. I set the phone down, my fingers curling into a fist. I wouldn't fall for it. Not again. I turned away, grabbing my coat. I needed air, answers, something. The phone glowed behind me, its light sharp in the dark. I stepped toward the door, my resolve hardening with every step. The park was a gray smear of wet leaves and mist, the air sharp with spring rain. I stood under a dripping oak, clutching a scrap of paper with Ethan's new number, scrawled by a friend of a friend. My heart thudded as I dialed, the phone cold against my ear. One ring, two, then his voice, low and impatient. "Yeah, who's this?" "Ethan," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "It's me." Silence stretched, thick and heavy. I gripped the phone tighter, my boots sinking into the mud. "We need to talk about the money." He laughed, a sharp cutting sound. "Money? It's mine. Dad, you gave it to me. Done deal." In the background, a woman's voice, Brittany's, giggled low and mocking. "Tell him to back off. Ethan, he's got nothing." My blood boiled, but I kept my tone even. "You said it was for college. You lied." The words burned my throat. I waited, hoping for shame, for anything human. Instead, he snorted. "Grow up, Dad. I'm not your charity case." Brittany's laugh spiked again, louder like a needle in my ear. "He's wasting your time," she purred. The line went dead. I stood there, rain dripping down my collar, the phone still pressed to my ear. Beep, beep, my hand shook, but not from cold. "You'll regret this," I whispered. The words swallowed by the wind. The park felt vast, empty, like it was holding its breath. I shoved the phone in my pocket and walked, leaves crunching underfoot, my anger a pulse in my chest. At home, the house was too quiet, the air stale. I tossed my coat over a chair and opened my laptop, its screen casting a pale glow across the kitchen. Ryan's words echoed. "You've got proof. Use it." I started searching. Ethan's social media, his friends, anything. My fingers flew over the keys, chasing threads. A photo of his Tesla posted by a friend. A club he'd been at. Brittany. Always there, smirking in the background. My jaw tightened. She was part of this. I knew it. I scrolled further, my eyes burning. Then I stopped. A post buried deep caught my attention. Something that didn't fit. My breath hitched. I leaned closer, clicking the link, my pulse racing. What was this? My hand hovered over the mouse, ready to dig deeper. The clock on the wall was still frozen, its hands stuck at midnight. I barely noticed. The screen glowed, pulling me in, and I knew I was close to something that could change everything. The elevator hummed, its mirrored walls throwing back my reflection. Tired eyes. Gray hair tucked into a neat bun. A folder clutched against my chest. I straightened my coat. The weight of bank statements and old texts grounding me. The doors slid open, and I stepped into Ryan's office, a sleek space of glass and steel in downtown New York. The air smelled of coffee and fresh ink, and outside the city buzzed under a gray sky. Ryan stood to greet me, his smile warm but professional. "Harlan," he said, gesturing to a chair. "You brought everything." I nodded, setting the folder on his desk. Papers spilled out. Loan agreements. Ethan's promises. My emptied savings. My hands shook as I arranged them, each sheet a piece of my betrayal. He scanned the documents, his brow creasing. "This is solid," he said, leaning back. "You've got a strong case for fraud. He took the money under false pretenses." His voice was steady, like a lifeline. "But we need more proof of how he spent it. Receipts, witnesses, anything." I swallowed, my throat tight. "He bought a Tesla, threw parties. I heard it from people." My voice cracked, and I hated it. "I loved him, gave him everything, and he—" I stopped, my fingers digging into my palms. Ryan's eyes softened. "My sister did something like that," he said quietly. "Took my parents' savings, ran off. It hurts, but you're doing the right thing." His words landed gently, a bridge between us. I nodded, blinking back tears. For the first time, I didn't feel alone. We talked strategy, tracking Ethan's purchases, finding witnesses, building a case. He handed me a list of contacts, bankers, friends of Ethan's, anyone who might talk. "Be discreet," he warned. "He's slippery." I tucked the list into my folder, my resolve hardening. Ethan thought I was weak. He'd learn otherwise. As we wrapped up, Ryan leaned forward. "You're stronger than you think. Harlan, don't forget that." I managed a small smile, his words like fuel. I stood, the folder heavier now, filled with purpose. "Thank you," I said, my voice steady. Outside, the wind bit at my face as I walked to the bus stop. Rain speckled my coat, and the city's hum felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. I pulled out my phone, checking for messages. One blinked on the screen from Susan, my neighbor. "People are talking about you. Be careful." My stomach twisted. Talking about what I reread the message, my fingers tightening around the list Ryan gave me. The bus pulled up, its doors hissing open. I climbed aboard, the folder pressed to my chest, Susan's words looping in my mind. Whatever was coming, I'd face it. I had to. The street was slick with rain, the asphalt gleaming under flickering streetlights. I pulled my scarf tighter, heading to the corner store for milk. Neighbors' houses glowed, curtains drawn, but their glances felt sharp. Susan had looked away when I passed her gate. Her lips pursed, my chest tightened, Susan's message still burning in my mind. "People are talking about you." Inside the store, fluorescent lights buzzed, casting stark shadows on the aisles. I grabbed a carton, my boots squeaking on the tile. At the counter, two women whispered, their eyes darting to me. "He's the one," one muttered, her voice low but clear. "Trying to ruin his own son. Greedy, they say." My cheeks burned, but I kept my head high. Handing the cashier my money, the door chimed, and Brittany Hayes sauntered in, her heels clicking like a challenge. Her smirk was sharp, her eyes scanning me like I was something to pity. "Harlan," she drawled, leaning against a display. "Stirring up trouble? Huh, Ethan's just living his life, and you're out here playing the victim." I gripped the milk carton, my knuckles white. "You know what he did," I said, my voice low, steady. "And you're part of it. But the truth comes out. Brittany always does." Her smile faltered just for a second before she laughed, tossing her hair. "You're pathetic," she snapped. "Keep dreaming." She turned, her heels echoing as she left. The cashier avoided my eyes, ringing up my purchase in silence. I left the store, the air outside cold and biting, Brittany's words stinging like salt in a wound. At home, I dropped the milk on the counter, my hands shaking. The house creaked, its quiet await. I saw Ryan's face, heard his voice. Rumors are their weakness. They're scared. He was right. Ethan and Brittany were lashing out, spreading lies to bury me. They thought I'd break. They didn't know me. I pulled the folder from my bag, its edges worn from handling. Bank statements, texts, proof of Ethan's lies. They were my armor. I sat at the kitchen table, the frozen clock staring down, and opened the folder. Each paper was a step toward justice, a way to reclaim my dignity. My phone buzzed. I hesitated, then answered. "Harlan," Ryan said, his voice urgent. "I found something about Ethan's spending. You need to hear this." My pulse quickened. "What is it?" I asked, leaning forward. He paused, then said, "It's bigger than we thought." My breath caught. I clutched the phone, my eyes locked on the folder. Whatever Ryan had found, it changed everything. The laptop's glow filled the kitchen, casting long shadows across the table. I scrolled through Brittany's social media, her posts a parade of glitz, clubs, designer bags, Ethan grinning beside her. Then I saw it. A photo of a loft, string lights crisscrossing the ceiling. Caption, "Party of the Century, tonight." My heart raced. Ethan's party, my chance. I grabbed my phone and dialed Ryan. "Harlan," he answered, his voice crisp. "You saw the post." I nodded, though he couldn't see. "It's perfect," he said. "Show up, gather evidence, or confront him publicly. But be smart. They're watching you." "I will," I said, my voice firm. I hung up and opened my folder, pulling out bank statements and screenshots of Ethan's texts, the printer whirred, spitting out pages, my record of his betrayal. I stacked them carefully, each sheet a weapon. My hands trembled, but not from fear. This was it. I paused, a memory flickering. Ethan at 9, clinging to me during a thunderstorm, his small voice whispering, "You'll keep me safe." Right. I promised I would. My chest ached, but I pushed it down. That boy was gone. The man he'd become had stolen from me, mocked me. He'd pay. I stood, crossing to my closet. I needed something for the party, something that said I wasn't broken. I pulled out a shirt, navy, simple but sharp. It hung like a flag of defiance. I slipped it on, the fabric cool against my skin, and stood before the mirror. My face showed every year, every worry, but my eyes burned with purpose. A photo tucked into the mirror's frame caught my eye. Ethan at 11, laughing at the lake, his hair wet from swimming. My breath hitched. I reached for it, my fingers brushing the faded edges. Why did it still hurt? I started to pull it down, but it slipped, fluttering to the floor. I froze, staring at the photo. My resolve wavered just for a moment. Then I straightened. Leaving it where it fell, I grabbed the folder, its weight steadying me, and headed for the door. The loft wasn't far, and I had a plan. Whatever happened tonight, Ethan would see me. Not the father he'd used, but the man he'd underestimated. The loft pulsed with neon lights, bass thumping through the floor like a heartbeat. I stood at the entrance, my navy shirt swaying in the evening breeze, the folder of evidence heavy in my hands. My pulse raced, but my steps were steady as I crossed the threshold. Inside, bodies swayed, laughter clashed with clinking glasses, and the air was thick with perfume and ambition. I scanned the crowd. There, Ethan, leaning against a bar, a smirk on his face, Brittany draped over his arm. I clutched the folder tighter, its edges biting into my palms. Years of sacrifice, nights cleaning offices, skipping meals, mortgaging my home, flashed before me, for him, for this. My jaw tightened. No more. I wove through the crowd, ignoring the curious glances, and approached the DJ booth. The kid behind the decks looked up, his headphones half off. "Can you cut the music?" I asked, my voice low but firm. He hesitated, then nodded. The beat stopped. Heads turned. Conversations faltered. The loft fell silent, save for the hum of neon and a distant car horn outside. I stepped into the center of the room, the folder raised like a flag. "Ethan," I called, my voice slicing through the quiet. "Son, look at this record." His smirk vanished. Brittany's eyes widened. Her drink frozen mid-sip. I opened the folder, pulling out copies of bank statements, loan agreements, his own texts promising repayment. I handed them to the nearest guests, who took them with hesitant fingers. "This is what my son did," I said, my tone steady. "He took $75,000, my home, my life, and spent it on cars and parties. On this." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Papers passed from hand to hand, whispers growing louder. Ethan pushed through, his face pale. "It's a lie," he shouted, his voice cracking. "He's making it up." But his eyes darted to the papers, and I saw fear. Brittany lunged forward, snatching a sheet from a guest. "This is nonsense," she hissed, but her hands shook. She shoved past a couple heading for the door. I stepped into her path, my gaze cold. "You can't run from the truth, Brittany," I said. She froze, then bolted, her heels clattering. The crowd closed in, voices rising. Ethan grabbed my arm, his grip tight. "You're ruining me," he snarled. I pulled free, meeting his eyes. "You ruined yourself." I turned, handing out the last papers, my heart pounding, but my head high. The loft erupted. Shouts, questions, phones snapping photos. I walked toward the exit, the folder empty now, my steps light despite the chaos. Ethan's voice chased me, raw and desperate, but I didn't look back. Outside, the air was cool, the city alive with distant lights. I took a breath, my chest loosening. Then I saw him, Ryan, leaning against a street lamp, his coat collar up against the wind. His eyes met mine, a quiet pride in them. "You did it," he said, stepping closer. I nodded, but his next words stopped me cold. This isn't over, Harlan. Not yet. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and stale coffee, its marble walls amplifying every cough, every shuffle. I sat in the front row, my hands clasped around a worn leather bag, its weight a reminder of the folder I'd emptied at the loft. Ryan sat beside me, his suit crisp, his presence steady. It's almost time, he whispered, squeezing my hand. I nodded, my throat tight, my eyes fixed on the judge's bench. Ethan slouched across the aisle, his tie loose, his face hollow. Brittany sat behind him, her head bowed, avoiding my gaze. The sight of them stirred something. Pity, maybe, or the ghost of love. But I pushed it down. They'd made their choices. So had I. The judge entered, her robe swishing, and the room stood. She settled, her glasses catching the light, and began. In the matter of Jameson versus Jameson, she said, her voice clear. We've reviewed the evidence of fraudulent misrepresentation. My heart thudded. Ryan's hand tightened on mine. She detailed the case, my loan, Ethan's lies, the Tesla, the parties. Each word was a brick. Building my justice. The defendant's actions, she continued, constitute a deliberate breach of trust. Ethan shifted, his jaw tight. Brittany's hands twisted in her lap. I kept my eyes on the judge, my spine straight. For damages and punitive measures, she said. The court orders Ethan Jameson to repay Harlan Jameson $225,000. A murmur swept the room. Triple my loss. I closed my eyes, whispering. Finally. Not victory, not joy. Just peace. Heavy and real. Ryan leaned close. You did it, Harlan, he said, his voice warm. I opened my eyes, managing a small smile. The judge's gavel struck, sharp and final. Ethan's head dropped, his hands gripping the table. Brittany slipped out, her steps quick like she could outrun the truth. Outside, the air was sharp, the sky a pale spring blue. I stood on the courthouse steps, my bag slung over my shoulder, the weight of the trial lifting. I thought of Ethan at 6, apologizing for a broken vase, his eyes wide and sorry. Had that boy ever been real, I didn't know anymore. My phone buzzed. Ethan's name flashing. My thumb hovered, tempted to answer, to hear his voice. But I let it ring, the sound fading into the city's hum. Whatever he wanted. Excuses. Anger. Tears. It wasn't mine to carry. I slipped the phone into my bag, my fingers brushing the leather. Ryan appeared beside me, his coat flapping in the breeze. Coffee? He asked, his grin soft. I hesitated, glancing at the street. A familiar car idled across the road. Ethan's Tesla, its engine low. My stomach twisted, but I turned to Ryan. Take me home, I said, my voice quiet but sure. The knock came sharp, cutting through the morning quiet. I set my coffee down, the mug warm in my hands, and crossed to the door. My house felt lighter today, sunlight spilling across the worn floorboards, the air soft with spring. I opened the door, and there they were. Ethan, his face gaunt, his eyes red, and Brittany shifting behind him, her usual smirk gone. Dad, Ethan said, his voice rough. Can we talk? He looked smaller, his shoulders hunched. No trace of the swagger I'd seen at the loft. Brittany clutched her purse, her nails chipped, her gaze fixed on the porch. I stepped aside, letting them in. The kitchen clock, still frozen at midnight, watched us. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Say what you came to say," I said, my tone even. Ethan swallowed, his hands fidgeting. "I messed up," he said. "I shouldn't have taken the money. I'll pay it back, I swear. Just drop the judgment, please." His eyes begged, but I saw the calculation behind them, the hope I'd soften. Brittany cleared her throat, her voice thin. "It wasn't my idea," she said, glancing at Ethan. "I just went along. Don't blame me." Her words were a dodge, weak and hollow. I almost pitied her. Almost. I took a breath, studying them. I remembered Ryan's words, "You're stronger than you think." I saw the years I'd given Ethan. My youth, my home, my trust. I saw the courtroom, the judge's gavel, the truth laid bare. "I gave you everything," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You took it and spat in my face. I choose myself now." Ethan flinched, his mouth opening, but no words came. Brittany's eyes darted to the door like she could escape her shame. I pointed to the exit. "Go," I said. They shuffled out, Ethan's head low, Brittany's steps quick. I closed the door, the click loud in the quiet. It felt final, like a lock turning on the past. The doorbell rang again, softer this time. Ryan stood on the porch, his grin easy, a paper bag in hand. "Brought treats," he said, stepping inside. "Figured you earned it." I laughed, the sound surprising me, light and free. We sat at the table, coffee steaming, the house warm around us. "You're starting over," Ryan said, his eyes kind. "What's next?" I sipped my coffee, the bitterness soft against the sweetness of the moment. I didn't have an answer, but for the first time that was okay. I stood, carrying my mug to the window. Outside, the street was alive. Kids biking, trees budding, the world moving on. My lips curved, a faint smile. The future was mine, and I was ready to meet it. My lips curved into a faint smile. The future was mine, and I was ready to meet it. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions in the comments below. What did you think of Harlan's journey? Did it remind you of anything in your own life? Feel free to ask questions for more discussion. We love interacting with you and hearing your thoughts. Your comments help us connect and grow together. To hear the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.